Worms. Their world lay under a scorching sun, its intensity made monstrous through the interventions of the bygone Q. The surface lay littered with husks of dead cities, baking endlessly like shattered statues in a derelict oven. Yet life remained on this unforgiving place. Forests of crystalline plants blanketed the surface, recycling oxygen for the animal life that teemed underground. One such species, barely longer than the arms of their ancestors, was the sole surviving vertebrate. Furthermore, it was that planet's last heir of the star people. Distorted beyond recognition by genetic modification, they looked for all the world like pale, overgrown worms. Tiny, feeble feet and hands modified for digging were all that betrayed their noble heritage. Aside from these organs, all was simplified for the life underground. Their eyes were pinpricks. They lacked teeth, external ears, and the better half of their nervous system. The lives of these ersatz people did not extend beyond digging aimlessly. If they encountered food, they devoured it. If they encountered others of their kind, they sometimes devoured them too. But mostly they mated and multiplied, and managed to preserve a single shred of their humanity in their genes. In time, it would do them good. Titans. On the endless savanna of a long-extinguished colonial outpost, enormous beasts roamed supreme. More than 40 meters long by terrestrial measurements, these behemoths were actually the transmuted offspring of the star people. Several features betrayed their human ancestry. They still retained stubby thumbs on their elephantine front feet, now useless for any sort of precise manipulation except for uprooting trees. They compensated their loss by developing their lower lip into a muscular, trunk-like organ that echoed the elephants of Earth's past. As bestial as they seemed, the Titans were among the smartest of the reduced submen that remained in the galaxy. Their hulking stance allowed for a developed brain, and gradually, sentience re-emerged. With their lip trunks they fashioned ornate wood carvings, erected hangar-like dwellings, and even began a form of primitive agriculture. With settled life came the inevitable flood of language and literature. Myths and legends of the bygone, half-remembered past were told in booming voices across the Great Plains. It was easy to see that, within a few 100,000 years, humanity could start again with these titanic primitives. Sadly, as a catastrophic ice age took over the Titans' homeworld, the gentle giants disappeared, never to return. Predators and prey. Devolved predators were common among humanity's feral worlds. Most of the time they resembled the vampires, werewolves, and goblins of bygone lore, hunting equally subhuman prey with a combination of derived weaponry. Some had enormous heads with large, killing teeth. Others tore their victims apart with talon-like feet. But the most common bore modified fingers and thumbs, bristling with razor-sharp claws. The most efficient of these predators lived on one of mankind's first off-world colonies. In addition to paw-like hands with switchblade thumbs, they also had gaping, tooth-studded jaws on disproportionate heads with large, sensitive ears. All of these served to make them the dominant predators on their home planet. They ran the prairies, stalked the forests, and ranged through the mountains in pursuit of different people, herbivorous saltators with bird-like legs. While their prey lapsed into complete animosity, the hunters managed to keep the spark of intelligence alive in their evolutionary honing. Mantelops. Not all devolved people lapsed into complete bestiality. Some held on to their minds, while losing all of their physiological advantages to the genetic meddling of the Q. A singular species was a prime exemplar. They had been bred as singers and memory retainers, acting much like living recorders during the reign of the Q. When their masters left, they barely survived, reverting into a quadrupedal stance and occupying a niche as grazing herd animals. This change was so abrupt that the newly evolved Mantelopes endured only due to the forgiving sterility of their artificial biosphere. The Mantelopes, equipped with full, if slightly numbed, human minds and completely disabled animal bodies, lived agonizing lives. They could see and understand the world around them, but due to their bodies they could do nothing to change it. For centuries, mournful herds roamed the plains, singing songs of desperation and loss. Entire religions and oral traditions were woven around the crippling racial disability, as dramatic and detailed as any on bygone Earth. Fortunately, the selective forces of evolution made their agony a short-lived one. Simply put, a brain was not advantageous to develop if it could not be put into good use. A dim-witted, half-minded Mantelope grew up faster than a smart one, and grazed just as efficiently. The Mantelope's animal children overtook them in less than 100,000 years, and their melancholic world fell silent for good. Nothing was sacred in the evolutionary process. Swimmers. Perhaps because their life cycle involved an aquatic larval stage, the Q had transmuted a large number of their human subjects into a bewildering array of aquatic creatures. Taken care of by specially bred attendants, these post-human water babies came in every shape and size imaginable. They were limbless, ribbon-like varieties of eel people, huge whale-like behemoths, decorative people who swam by squirting water out of their hypertrophied mouths, and horrifying multitudes of brainless wallowers that served as food stock. All of them were perfectly domesticated. All of them went extinct when their masters left. All save a few lightly mutated, generalized forms. These swimmers still resembled their human ancestors to a large degree. They had no artificial gills, their hands were still visible through their front flippers, their feet were splayed affairs that functioned like a pair of tail flukes. Recognizably human eyes peeked through their blubbery eyelids, and they spoke to each other, though not in words, and never in sentient understanding. For millennia they swam the oceans of their ecologically stunted world, feeding on diversified kinds of fish and crustaceans, survivors of the food stock originally imported from Earth. With the intervention of the Q gone, natural selection resumed. The swimmers became more streamlined to better catch their fast prey. The prey responded by getting even faster, or evolving defensive countermeasures such as armor, spikes, or poison. Their evolution back on track, the swimmers drifted further and further away from their sentient ancestry. They would wait for a long time indeed to taste that blessing again. Lizard herders. They were the lucky ones. Instead of unrecognizably distorting them as they had done to most of their subjects, the Q had merely erased their sentience and stunted the development of their brains. Distantly resembling their ancient forebearers on Earth, the primitives led feral lives for an unnaturally long time. They never regained sentience after the Q left, despite having every incentive to do so. This was partially due to the total absence of predators on their garden world, resulting in no advantage for intelligence. Furthermore, the Q had made some small but integral changes to their brains, tweaking with the structure of cerebellum so that certain features associated with heuristic learning could never emerge again. Once again, the reasons for these baffling changes remained known only to the Q. The dumb people eventually settled in a symbiosis with some of the other creatures that inhabited their planet. They began to instinctively farm some of the large, herbivorous reptiles, ancestors of which were brought from Earth as pets. Soon, the balance of this mutualism began to tip in the reptiles' favor. The tropical climate of the planet gave them an inherent advantage, and they underwent a spectacular radiation of different species. They encountered no competition from the only large mammals on the planet, the brain-neutered descendants of the starfarers. Faced with a reptilian turnover, the only adaptation the submen could muster was to slip quietly into bestial oblivion. Tempter. In the Tempter's case, the remodeling was done with an almost artistic enthusiasm. How they managed to survive in their bizarre form was not clear. Their ancestors were used as sensile decoration, and through some miracle of adaptation, they had endured. No human would have recognized them as their descendants. The females were beaked cones of flesh some 2 meters tall, rooted in soil-like grotesque carnivorous plants. The males, on the other hand, resembled contorted, bipedal monkeys. Unlike their mates, they were perfectly ambulatory. Dozens of them ran around the females' mounds like so many imps. Some would gather food. Others would clean the females, while others would stand guard for danger. Though their actions looked purposeful, the males had no will of their own. In Tempter society, females controlled everything. Using a combination of vocal and pheromonal signals, they guided the masculine hordes into any number of menial tasks, while mating with the strongest, the most obedient, and the dumbest to produce even better drones. On certain periods, they would also give birth to a few precious females, who would be carried away by subservient males to root themselves. It was a terribly efficient hegemony that would certainly give rise to civilization in a matter of centuries had fate not intervened. As a stray comet obliterated the Tempter's mound forests, one of humanity's best chances for reemergence was cruelly swept away.